Hey Rock. Hey, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
I'm on my way to
How's
New Orleans tomorrow.
your what?
I'm on my way to New Orleans tomorrow.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, my family lives there.
Really? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can catch one of your uh, trainings in the park.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You should come to the No Aikido training and get some. We're not grabbing contact yet, but we get some more kind of connection work going on. So yeah,
Definitely.
we have these like 10-foot pipes. They have a little bit of give, and we connect on either end of them to move around together. It's a great kind of experiment in connection without being able to grab each other. So yeah, cool. Yeah, for sure. Send me a message when you're here, and we'll practice a little bit. That would be great.
I definitely will.
Yeah. Hi, Amira, is that who I see here? Hello, welcome. We'll start in probably 3-4 minutes. See if some more people come into the space.
Hello, and thank y'all for hosting this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hi.
Hi, I was looking actually for um an Aikido workshop done in the Twin Cities because that's where I live in Minneapolis. But I found this one instead, so I would like to see where it goes.
Have you practiced any Aikido before?
Zero.
Zero? Okay, great. Well, this is perfect then. Um, yeah, this is going to introduce some principles. I also have the recording of the first session that you can access if you just contact me, um, and I'll get you that link as well. But yeah, happy to have beginners of all varieties here. So um, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And we'll do some introductions for all of us in just a moment or two once I just give a minute or two and see if some other people come in.
All right. Do you have the information in your
All right, so we'll see if anybody comes in late. I might just have to let them in the space, but we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to start with just a little bit of time to introduce ourselves, so we can share names, pronouns, take a moment just to share one. I don't think I did this last week, but I'd just like to hear how you might have found out about the practice and what kind of degree. I know, Rock, you shared a little bit last week about how you found out and what attracted you to Aikido, but share that again. And then share in as many words as you like how you're feeling in your body today, kind of using the language of the body as much as possible. So I'll start. I'm TT. You can also call me Tim. They, them pronouns. And I practice Aikido amongst other somatic and embodied arts for many years. And today I'm feeling pretty soft, tired, but soft and gentle in my body. And then I'll pass to Rock.
Cool. Hey, y'all. I'm Rock. And they or Rock is fine for pronouns. I'm feeling a little sore from moving this week. I started getting back into what feels like a good routine for myself with body weight stuff, and that's feeling really good. So that and the mix of being tired, but feeling sore in a meaningful way. Amira, I'm passing it off to you.
All right, thank you, Rock. My name is Amira. I would put on my video, but I have light in my background, so I just look like a silhouette. I'm Amira. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and what brought me here is a discussion with my current partner about basically this belief I have that one day all of the institutions and status quo we have are going to blow over, and when that happens I want to be prepared to for whatever happens, and they are rather anti-gun in that household, and so we decided that we would take a number of self-defense classes before we make that decision. And so that is part of why I want to be here. And yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. And I have behind me, we're going to be doing a little bit as it was a little last week. We do some practice, some movement together, kind of embodying different principles. And we'll do some of the things we did last week and some new practices, but we'll also take moments to talk about some of the concepts that I'm going to try to have us work on embodying. So I have a little thing here I wanted to start talking about, just some list of benefits of Aikido that I think are really important. Aikido is, of course, a martial art or a Budo. So self-defense is, of course, one of the components of why you practice and the benefits of practice. I like to think of self-defense both in terms of internal and external, right? So self-defense internally is kind of like emotional and psychological self-defense or self-growth, self-centering, things like that. And the external is kind of like not just protection against violence and attack, but boundaries, things like that. Having healthy boundaries, having good awareness of the nuance of physical spaces. One of the most important things in Aikido, from my personal experience in terms of self-defense, is being very hyper aware of situations of violence before they happen. And we'll do some practices a little bit at the end today, working with kind of, obviously we're not, if we were in person, we could do a whole other level of different practices with grabbing and attacking that is really wonderful to do in our Aikido practice. We're going to do some with like a simulated attack and just kind of working on how to move our bodies with this notion of relaxed strength, which I'll talk a little bit about too. But particularly today, the components I want to concentrate on are this one here, centering and change, which can have lots of different levels of meaning, both on a body level and kind of cultural level at large, centering through change. We're obviously going through a lot of change right now in our world, in our society, some that I think has good potential, some destructive, and potential for positive and negative change in that upheaval. But we'll talk about this in terms of like our own individual somas today, right, rather than the greater cultural soma so much. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about connection and communication. And I'm going to start off practice today with some exercises that have to do with connecting and communicating, even though we're on these little screens at distances from each other. New Orleans, Florida, Twin Cities, all across the country. We'll do a little connection and communication practice together. And those are the kind of things we're going to focus on primarily today. Build on some of these other concepts next week as well. But before we do that, we'll just flip back here to what I did last week, the ABCs of Aikido: awareness, balance, and center. I'm going to keep revisiting this in every class. And all the practices we're going to do are going to try to have these three qualities in them, no matter what we're doing. Have awareness of the body, awareness of space, center in the body, center in movement, and then finding balance, physical, emotional, psychological balance. Really great benefit of this particular martial arts. And of course, embodied somatic practice in general is really about finding balance, cultivating balance. So we're going to start with today. Before we do some standing practice, I want to do two practices. We're going to do a connection practice, which is very simple, but it's about getting energy flowing between us. So even, Amira, if we can't see you, that's okay. We're still going to have the notion of connecting. This is a practice where we're simply going to put our hands up towards the screen with your palms facing up. All right, so we're going to connect. In Chinese medicine, there's this point called Lao Gong in our palm, which is the number one energy connective point. So, oh great, video on too. I see you are like a silhouette now. So we're just going to do this to connect to each other, so we can see each other's hands, we can connect, and then you're just going to say, and you don't have to turn your microphone on so I can hear you, but just say, "Thanks for being here." Something like that. "Thanks for being here. Glad to be here with you." Just establish some connection. This is a great practice. I've been doing this practice on video chats I have with everybody these days. Just I can't touch you, right? So I want to kind of find some way to establish touch without touch. So just feeding some energy. Thanks for being here, y'all. Okay, so a little moment of connection there. And when we do practice Aikido, we do lots of exercises with contact and connection. And we talk about working as partners when we're practicing the forms versus working as competitors. And we simulate attacks and sort of violent aggression in the movements, but we try not to cultivate that in our practice spaces as it was. The next thing we're going to do is what's called a grab. Now, if we were in a practice space, grab would literally be a grab, grabbing you somewhere, right? Which can open up lots of triggers in our body. What I want to do is a grab with voice. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is to turn 90 degrees to one side or the other. We're going to do both sides, so it doesn't matter which one you start with. Facing just to left or right from the screen. And what I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to do before I do it. I'm going to shout, "Hey," at some point, unexpectedly, even though I told you. And I just want you to notice what happens in your body when you hear that. We'll talk about it after too. Hey. Okay, and then you can turn to face the other side. So we'll get kind of both sides of the body, both hemispheres of the brain, that whole mind body together with this practice. And again, just notice what you feel in your body when you receive that sound, if it's different from the other side. Hey. Okay, and you can come back to your center. And I just want to open it up if either of you want to share any somatic responses that you noticed on either side, or uniformly or differently. So again, that's kind of like a grab using voice, but we have that in our daily lives, right? We can get triggered by people actually grabbing and touching us, and also just by an aggression of voice or breaking a boundary. So If you want to share, totally up to you.
Yeah, when I was facing this direction, I felt my eyes sort of like blink, and I felt sort of a bit of heat move up into like my collarbone area, collarbone and like upper chest. But when I was facing this way, I didn't really feel it as much because I was like right at the bottom of a breath.
Mm,
So yeah.
great, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I heard you clearer through my left ear. It was like I don't know, just clearer. And I jumped a little bit. I felt myself jump and also kind of half smile.
Yeah.
I had the same reaction on both sides, but I heard you clearer on the left side.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and really nice, both of you, very nice qualities of noticing some things in the body there. Even if they're really, really subtle, we can feel them. Oftentimes, people looking from the outside might not notice, but you feel like this jump, or you feel this heat, or these kind of responses. So, again, that's kind of like a grabbing practice. When we're in the dojo, we do it with actual grabs, but we start to kind of work on and respond to nuance in our soma a little bit differently. So that is kind of building on these qualities again, is finding out awareness of how we respond. It's not just, it's easy to be centered when we're in like our safe space, when we're in our most calm minds, when everything's really easy and relaxed, but how do we keep our center when things start to ratchet up, right? And that's just a little stimulation of that kind of nuance. So we're going to move from that into some practice. We'll start sitting down. We're going to do some practices that kind of work on this quality, awareness, center, and balance. And then I'll talk a little bit about these 4 qualities once we stand up on the next page I have. But we'll start with a little breath practice, sitting down. We're going to do something called cleansing breathing. It's basically just like taking a really, really deep breath, but we try to open up and let the whole upper body receive and move for the breath. So when I breathe in, I want to kind of let my belly expand if I can. The rib cage and chest move, even the shoulders can move. So try to receive movement in the whole upper body with the breath. And that's just the cleansing breathing practice. You can breathe through the nose or the mouth, whatever is most comfortable for you to have a really nice, relaxed breath. So it just tries to open up all the tissues in the upper body, and we start to kind of feel into our center, drop in a little deeper. So you can just start taking some deep breaths. Really try to let all of this move as much as you can. With each breath, see if there's a little bit of more space you can find. Especially in the areas of the neck and the shoulders, where there might not always be very much space, at least to start off with. It feels like there's a lot of contraction or blockage there. But with each breath, you might find a little bit more each time. Notice how when you exhale, everything kind of drops and sinks and compresses back in. It's kind of bringing you back into your center. Take a few more deep breaths. Then you can just kind of relax and settle back into most natural breath pattern, rhythm, placement of the breath. Notice if you feel any differently in terms of your tension, relaxation, that kind of scale along your body. If you feel any differently about awareness of this upper body or the center there, the pelvis, belly. And we're going to go ahead and move into some standing practice next. So you can take a few moments to come to a standing place. So the first practice we're going to do, standing here, we're going to do something called centering in 4 dimensions. So we're going to kind of scan with our mind, with our focus and attention through the different dimensions of the body, hopefully fill out our awareness a little bit, and then we're going to come back to the center. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but when I talk about the center, there's lots of sort of energetic centers in the body. The center we're going to focus on in Aikido practice, which is sometimes called the 1 point or hara in Japanese, is this center just below the belly button. So if you want to touch that right now, you can, and just feel that place. Kind of like your hands are below and your thumbs could be right on your belly button. I have this practice belt on, usually the knot sits just about above that. So this is the 1 point, kind of the gravitational center, sacral center, root center. It's the area of our body that's the fulcrum and pivot, right? Our hips and pelvis. Also all the muscles from the shoulders down to the knees connect to this area of the body. So it's really quite a big center in lots of different ways. So you can release your hands. We're going to center along these different dimensions and revisit that one. So we'll start with the length of the body. Just noticing here. And start by noticing the bottoms of your feet. And then maybe noticing up either the front or the back of the legs. Just kind of noticing sensation along your skin. Noticing what you feel in the joints, muscles. Finding the length of your body. You can feel the length in your arms too, maybe hanging from the shoulders. Maybe you can feel the force of gravity in your pelvis. Letting that sink a little bit. Also feeling the length of your spine, the uprightness, all the way up through the top of the head, the crown of the skull. Feeling the center in our length. Then we're going to move to be aware of our width. So I like to start by just shifting my weight slightly from side to side, one foot to the other. Kind of feeling out this weight shifting, manifesting the width of my body space. And maybe with that weight shifting, you can feel a little bit more the outside and the inside of the feet, that width of your feet there. Start to notice the space between the feet, space between the knees and the hips. Maybe you can notice or feel the breath on the side of the body, the breath on the side body, ribs. You can notice the space between the arms and the torso. Even with your arms open and closed like this, feel that space. It's part of the width of the body. The space across the chest, collarbone, shoulders. Even the width of your vision, maybe start to notice the periphery of your vision a little bit. See the edges of what you can see. So centering with our width. And we're going to center on our depth. So to start off with depth, I like to start with the feet again, maybe moving weight from the heels to the toes a little bit, rocking forward and backwards slightly. Start to feel that depth of the body. And I like to start scanning on the back of my body because the front of the body is often where our focus and attention is. All of the sense perception is focused in the front. So I like to start with the back. Just kind of scan up, scan up from the heels, up the backs of the legs, noticing the backs of my knees, backs of my hips, the whole back, the spine, shoulder blades, ribs in the back of the body. Noticing the back of the neck, back of the head. And if you like, you can kind of continue from there, moving your awareness to the front of the body and scanning down the face, noticing the feeling in your face, all the little fine muscles in the face there. Forehead and eyebrows, cheeks, jaw, nose, chin, lips. Notice your neck and collarbone, chest, ribs, belly, hips, legs, all the way down, knees, ankles, feet, and toes. We start to fill out into our depth a little bit. You can bring your hands back to this one point. So again, just below the belly button, your thumbs on the belly button. With a little bit of that whole body awareness, 3 dimensions here. We center back into our body, into the one point, kind of the center of all those other axes. And staying with this one point, I think one of you said about with that grab practice that you were on the end of a breath at one point when I said hey, and it was like a little bit calmer, easier. That's kind of the same feeling of being in the one point, is you're kind of dropping in and you're calm and relaxed. And often a practice with centering this one point is kind of dropping energy, dropping awareness, dropping breath. And then when a stimulus, a grab, an attack kind of comes, surprises you, rather than jumping up, it's like you're sinking down. You're centering, you're getting heavier, you're like a little bit more in that mode of relaxed strength preparation. We just like to bring our mind here, our attention here, whenever possible. And you can stay standing. I'm gonna just show this little piece of writing that we talked about last week. So this is kind of 4 principles of mind-body coordination in Aikido practice. This is something outlined by one of the oldest practitioners and teachers in Aikido. I like to call it OR-WE. One point, which we talked about, focusing on the one point, relax everything. Of course, vague and easier said than done, but about cultivating relaxation. Weight underside, we'll talk about that in our practice, and extend ki. So we're going to do a couple practices that focus on these as well. Having the weight underside, having a relaxed uplift in the body, and extending ki, ki being energy like chi or prana. So we'll do a practice where we hopefully try to embody these 4 principles. So to start off with, we have a little bit of awareness of that one point. We're going to start to relax. Relax everything. Again, there's tension, there's stiffness, there's soreness. Sometimes relaxation isn't about getting rid of the stiffness and soreness, but having a different kind of conception with your mind about how you feel about it, right? So there's stiffness in my body that I'm never going to get rid of, but if I just stay soft in my mind, I can let it be there and maybe move a little bit more relaxed. So we're going to get into a posture that hopefully allows us to sink and relax a little bit more, and then we'll continue cultivating that. So the posture is called Zhang Zhuan in Qigong practice. We're going to start by having the feet about shoulder width apart. hips width if that's more comfortable for you, in that range. The first thing I want you to do is just sink into your knees a little bit. So bend the knees, not to a degree where we're squatting, but just a little bit where it kind of brings the pelvis down a little bit. Starts to sink the weight of the body down. That comes back to that weight underside principle. The weight is low in the body. That's how we can cultivate nice heaviness and deep roots and stability. And then check that your hips aren't kind of angled too far back or too far forward. Let them kind of sink in a little bit too. And sometimes do this by thinking about tucking your tailbone slightly in, so it elongates the lower vertebra of the spine. Next thing we're going to do, make sure the chin is hanging in a little bit. So versus this kind of position with the chin coming out, exaggerating, but kind of let the chin hang in a little bit. Almost like the chin is having a little weight on it. And that's going to elongate the vertebra, the upper end of the spine. So we create space in the spine. A little tuck of the tailbone, a little hanging from the chin. And I'd like you to take a few deep breaths with me and lift up the shoulders with your breaths. So breathe the shoulders up and relax them down. Just a couple times. Okay. Feel that last down, kind of the weight of the shoulders or the weight of the arms, allowing the shoulders to relax. Almost like your shoulder blades are sliding down your back a little bit. We're going to look at this principle of weight underside. It's often talked about in terms of the position of the arms. If I were to lift my arms up like this, as if they're being lifted up from something underneath, like an invisible force, this ki that we talked about, this energy. So we're going to come from with the arms hanging down. I want you to picture that there's something underneath them, and it's lifting them up. You start to slowly float up. See if you can keep your shoulders relaxed as you do this. Just to about this height, a little below the chest. So the elbows stay relaxed here before the elbows start coming up. This is a nice position and posture here, the Zhang Chuan posture, for us to find a relaxed position with the whole body. The weight is underside, so there's lots of weight in our legs going down to the ground. The upper body should feel a little bit light. The arms are being lifted from underneath. So, like I said, with the chin too, you could almost imagine the same with your elbows, like there's a weight hanging elbows down. You can check here if your shoulders feel like they're starting to come up, just drop them back down. Just going to hold this for a few moments. Take some nice deep breaths. With each breath, I'd like you to picture the exhalation like washing down through your body. Exhalation is going to wash down through the body. It's going to sink weight, sink the strength of the body, the energy of the body into the legs, into the earth. So we can cultivate heaviness and root stability, which is very important in martial practice in terms of holding boundaries, in terms of having relaxed position to respond from. So we can be proactive rather than reactive. And relax the hands again. Drop. You can straighten up through the legs. So a little postural practice that helps us start to get into some of those principles. Next thing we're going to do is an extension practice. So I talked about extending ki. Did this practice last week too. We're going to do it with a couple of things in mind. Extension practice is a feeling of finding extension through the whole body. Feeling relaxed, but within your power, your natural body's power. So we're going to do extension practice in a stance here. And the stance that we take in Aikido is usually a pretty narrow stance. So I can step your right foot forward, your left foot back. Positioning here like this. You'll find the depth between your feet that works for your body. They could be closer, they could be further apart. Whatever feels okay for you, where you're not. The saying is like, you want to have mobility and stability, right? If I'm really, really wide, I'm really stable, but I'm not very mobile. And if I'm really narrow, I'm very mobile, but I'm not very stable. So we find that middle ground. We'll do some more work on stance today too. But extension practice, simply like this. If my right foot is forward, I'm going to take my right hand, I'm going to extend it up in front of me like this. Kind of like what we did with each other, extending our palms out in connection. What we're going to practice is 3 qualities. We're going to practice collapsing, we're going to practice pushing, and we're going to practice then the relaxed full body extension as kind of the third option. So what I want you to do is with your extended hand, have this nice straight arm, and the other hand is going to come and it's going to just grab it and collapse it in. And let your arm collapse, but do the work with the other hand. So grab it and pull it back in. Yeah. And offer no resistance, or at least no intentional resistance. Yeah. But also try not to anticipate by moving this arm on its own. Let the grabbing hand pull it in. Good. So this is kind of a collapsing of extension. We talked a little bit about self-defense as both internal and external boundaries, right? So we can think of this as like, here's a safety, like if someone was going to be attacking you, you'd want to have some distance to judge what their movements might be. You get too close, you might not know. But also if you're too far away, maybe there's too much time, too much space. So this kind of extension is a good way of thinking, a good principle of a relatively safe space, but also a space that maybe I can affect some control of a situation. So the next one we're going to do is a pushing or a resisting. So with the opposite hand, grab the wrist again and try to pull it in, and this time using your upper body muscles. Resist it. Use the shoulder, use the bicep, whatever, the chest. Push against with both hands. One hand's pulling in, the other hand's pushing out, creating resistance here, using the strength. You can release that. So strength obviously has its benefits, but what we're trying to get to in Aikido practice is a relaxed strength. So that's an example of a really contracted, tense strength. Now we're going to do relaxed extension. So with this one, I like to think about that my back heel here is kind of leading the extension, right? It starts from here. If I have my right hand up, I have this heel here. That's kind of the line of extension through my body. It comes from my back heel all the way up through my back, across my back, and out the arm. You could almost imagine it like a rope, or even better, maybe a river of energy flowing from the back heel up to the front hand. So take a moment with your arm extended, see if you can feel that. At least with your mind, make a connection between your back heel and your front palm. Make a connection through your body. Find a path from the back heel to the front palm. And then what I want you to do is take the opposite hand, grab the wrist, and try to pull the hand in. And rather than pushing with the strength of the upper body, think about you're pushing all the way from the back heel, using that extension. So your muscles in your arm, your chest, they might still be working, but to a lesser degree. without too much contraction or tension. See if you can find that extension to resist the pull of the other arm, using the whole body space. Okay. We're going to do the same practice on the other side. So that's kind of what we mean when we say extending ki. It's using the whole body space. It's summoning energy, letting it flow. And when we, again, the strength of our muscles is always valuable and important. But if there's too much contraction, too much tension, we're actually blocking pathways for the energy. So we try to stay relatively relaxed, or we're going to be stronger. So we'll do it again with the left foot forward. Again, finding the right width for your body. And we'll start with the collapsing. So take the opposite hand, let the extension collapse. Good. Yeah, and again, without anticipating it too much, wait till you grab it and start to pull it in, but try to have no intentional resistance. So this is collapsing the boundaries, collapsing your space. And then we'll do that resistance using the strength. So with the extension, grab with the other hand, and one is pulling in and the other is pushing out. Really be strong. Use all the strength of your upper body that you want to. The thing about strength against strength is you get tired eventually, right? When we use relaxed strength, we can cultivate that and go for longer and longer. So just after doing that for a minute, I'm like, okay, shoulder's tired. So we're going to do that relaxed extension now. So you can extend the hand and take a few moments to feel that pathway again, from the back heel all the way up through the front palm. Whatever feeling in your body, the shape, the direction of the path, just make that connection. Of course, our whole body is always connected. Right? We just want to really summon up that awareness. You might even find as you connect, you feel like you're reaching further in both directions. You find an extra ½ an inch in your leg and in your arm or in your spine. When you're ready, take the other hand, grab it, and be ready to feel that strength coming all the way through your body. It's relaxed strength, full body extension. You're pulling in, and I'm feeling my whole body from my heel, up through my leg, through my back, through the arm, feeling that whole path as an extension held against this pull. And I feel like I could hold this for far longer than when I was pushing with my arm. In fact, this arm's going to get tired first. Okay. So that's a little practice of those kind of 4 principles. We can sit down again for a few minutes. Little practice of those principles. 1 point, relax completely, weight underside, and extending ki. The next thing we're going to do, and I just want to be aware of my time. Okay. The rest of the class today we're going to spend on doing some practices around energy spirals. And I have lots of different notes on this kind of stuff. I don't want to spend too long talking, but we're going to talk a couple details. So the circle, the square, and the triangle. These are kind of 3 shapes in Chinese and Japanese somatic practice and philosophy. These 3 shapes kind of reinforce each other. Some of you may have seen, even in Western philosophy, there's a structure of, I have it on the next page, circle inside square, inside triangle, inside another circle. This is kind of the reinforced, strong structure. But we'll just talk a little bit about each of these 3 things. We'll look more at the natural elements next week or the week after. So I want to talk about relationship to nature in this practice too. But the circle represents yin and water and blending. The square is solid and rooted, earth. And the triangle is yang, fire, direct entering. So these 3 principles are 3 things that you want to have in your body to be effective in a martial situation, but also just beneficial for somatic health, mental health, right? We want to be solid and rooted, have a good base, a foundation. We want to be able to blend, to center and change, to be pliable, movable, responsive, but we also want to be direct and enter, and direct in communication too, right? Be able to say what we want, to say what we need, communicate directly. So these three principles, we're going to talk more about these another week too, but they go into the property of spiraling energy. We're going to do movements with spirals in a few minutes and talk about how these three come in. So excuse my the quality of my drawing here, because it's not very good, but this is the power of spirals. Okay, so there's my little person here. The spiral in the red here, moving up through the body. The spiral goes in all four directions, so we have the directionality of the triangle, right? Up and down, side to side. You can even think about it at any other angle of direction. The spiral has a circular flow, like the circle, and then it has its structure, like the square. It creates a structure like in a screw, right? There's a really uniform structure. Once you put a screw in something, it holds well because of that spiral structure. Better so than like a nail, which is just the direction. So the three properties of the spiral can be represented by that square, circle, triangle philosophy. And that's what makes spirals kind of the most powerful shape of moving your energy. And when we do that extension practice, that's kind of what we're doing, even if we weren't aware of it, is we're working with the spiral paths in our body. We're coming from the left foot, the left heel to the right hand. It's crossing across the medial plane of the body. It's starting to get into that spiral of energy there. So we're going to do some practices with the spiral. We did a little bit of spiraling at the end of last session. We're going to start with that practice where we're just spiraling the whole body. And then, let me see if I can, yeah. So why don't we stand up again and we'll do some spiraling. And then we're going to look a little bit at spiraling and movement and kind of entering into a theoretical, at this point at least, a theoretical attack. So we're going to start with a whole body spiral, just so we can feel that shape a little bit in our soma, in our bodies. So you can start with your feet about hips or shoulder width apart again, comfortable stance. We're going to start by moving the bottoms of the feet in a circle. All right, and what I mean by that is creating one circle with both feet together. So you might feel kind of weight onto the heels and to the outside of one foot, inside of the other, to the toes, like that, yeah. So we're starting the spiral from the feet and we're letting the whole body spiral. And again, it might just feel like we're drawing a circle, but we're making a pathway vertically through our body. We're starting at the feet. We're letting the spiral kind of circulate up through the body. So see if you can sense or feel that in your body. Starting with the feet, feeling your knees spiraling, feeling your hips spiraling, chest, shoulders. See if you can relax your arms if you need to kind of bring your shoulders up and down again. Let the arms be free. The arms might want to just kind of sway here as you spiral. See if you can also release your neck a little bit. You see, I'm starting to release my neck. I didn't do it right away because I want to let the spiral move upwards and find that pathway, that verticality. So it's not just like I'm making one circle with my whole body at the same time. See if you can feel the spiral moving in that direction. Again, to whatever degree, places of tension and contraction, things that we have, all of us have in our bodies, may prevent some parts of the body from totally feeling the spiral. But that's why it's a practice, because we have to, over time, start to free up more and more to feel it. We're never going to get completely away from tension in the body. It's just, how do we make space for it? So see if you can feel that whole body spiraling. Then we're going to take the kind of origin of the spiral. We're going to keep it going, keep the movement going. But we're going to change the idea of where it's originating from to our hips and that one point center. See, we were thinking about the feet first. Now we're going to think about it starts here. It starts in the pelvis, it starts in the center. And now it kind of moves out in two directions, right? It's moving up from the center, spiraling up, and spiraling down into the knees and the ankles and feet. For the purposes of this exercise, see if you can focus on the movement from the hips. Most primarily put your attention there. And then the rest of the body is just invited to move versus kind of intentionally making the neck move, making the knees move. We start from the hips and just let the spiral naturally stretch out. You might find that certain parts of your body are moving like idiosyncratically, not at the same rhythm, not in the same way, or not even making the same direction. That's totally natural because of how we're spiraling. Different places are moving at different levels, at different distance. We're going to move the origin now to the head and the neck. You can either think about it as the top of the head, if that's okay. You can think about it as the neck or the chin. We're going to originate the spiral from this area. So the whole body's still moving, but we're starting the spiral from the head, and it's kind of traveling down. So this may be the most difficult of the three. It always is for me because of tension in my neck. But just try as best you can to feel the spiral up there. And if other parts of your body aren't moving as much as they were before, that's okay. You just want to try to draw the spiral from the top. And then we're just going to see if we can follow it down the body. So it's starting in the head here. Feel it maybe in the shoulders. Feel it go down into the hips. Feeling it in your knees, ankles, and back into the feet. And then you can just kind of gently and slowly let it fade away. Movement fades away. As the external movement fades away, just notice if you feel anything still inside. Is there still a spiraling movement of energy, movement of stimulation in your body? So that spiral energy is still inside. This practice is kind of reinforcing it through the body. Okay. So we're going to do two little movement practices with this spiraling idea in mind. The first one is called turning around the point. In Japanese, it's called tenkan. This is one of the basic footwork exercises we do in Aikido. So we'll get into a stance with the right foot forward, just like we did for our extension practice. You can see the stance, I assume, and you have this be adjusted to whatever your own body feels in terms of width, exactly where your feet are positioned. But I try to make a narrow stance. It's like my back foot is kind of right behind my front foot with a nice distance for my own body. This narrow stance was actually in the origination of Aikido and the martial practice. It was about concealing your footwork. We have these long skirts we wear in practice, and they can hide your feet. So this is kind of like concealing my footwork so that the person I might be practicing with or attacking or whatever doesn't know if I'm about to step back, step to one side, step forward, So this is the narrow stance for that practical reason. So with this stance here, we're going to do turning around the point. I'll take an angle so you can see my movement a little better. So turning around the point is referring back to what I started with. It's about centering in the change of your position, the change of your body. So simply put, the practicals of the movement is that we're going to take the weight off the front foot. We're going to start to turn that front foot in. And we pivot our whole body, face the back foot. Once I've pivoted, I'm going to take what's now my front foot. If I started on my right, this is on my left. I'm going to drop it back behind. So what I should end up is I should be facing the opposite side of the room I started facing, but with the same foot forward that I started on. So the right foot, if we start on our right side here, right foot position doesn't really change. Just pivots and stays where it is. This is kind of our center here. So we're centering. This is our pivot point. So again, I take some weight so I can start to pivot, turn, and drop the foot back. Pivot, turn, and drop the foot back. Good. So this is Tinkan, turning around the point. This is a very great practice for kind of making a narrow and concise movement. We're going to look a little bit about how that works with the theory of a grab or an attack. So just take a few moments to practice this on the right foot forward here. Again, pivoting, dropping the left foot back. So you always end up with the right foot forward after you finish, and you're facing the opposite way. It's kind of about turning into your blind spot. Right? So we turn very quickly to see what's behind us without losing our center. More and more you practice this, it becomes more kind of, it increases in martial efficacy because you can do it very quickly and turn and see what's behind you right away. Okay, and we'll do it with the left foot forward now. So just switch your stance, have the left foot forward. Same practice, the left foot is your forward foot, it's your pivot point, it's the center. We're turning around that center point. And in keeping with this idea of the 1 point center, we want to have more of our weight forward on this foot. Other than this moment we pivot, try to have more weight forward. So I start with weight forward, and I end up with more weight forward too. So we keep some sense of grounding into this foot, other than that moment where it needs to pivot. So again, pivot and turn, and drop the foot back. So we always end up with the left foot forward at the end of each turn. The foot doesn't move from its place, it just pivots on the spot. Okay, we're going to do this turning practice with a little prop or an object. So I know that, Rock, you probably have your water bottle, but either a water bottle or some sort of weighted object. The water bottle is nice because the water has movement. But if you have something, anything that's a little weighted will work as well. Sometimes we use little bocce balls. And we feel a weight in our hands, yeah. So we can go back to the right foot forward stance with some sort of weight in your hand. What we want to try to do now is have this weight represent the same idea as this pivot point. So if you watch, what I want to try to do is I want to turn with as much disturbance to this, as little disturbance to this point as possible. this weight can, and it's nice to have the weight in your hand to simulate this. The weight can kind of sit on top of that pivot point foot. And as I turn, it stays on top of that foot as closely as possible. So this kind of connects to our extension practice, but we have a weighted, kind of more relaxed hand here rather than way up here. We feel some extension. We feel like holding this point, a nice relaxed feeling through the arm. So see how that works for your body. You kind of keep this nicely over the pivot foot as you're turning. We'll talk a little bit about how this practice is effective in just a moment in terms of the martial quality and the center. I already feel some ideas of why. And we'll do the same with the left foot forward. So put the weight, whatever it is, in your left hand. And then we're going to do the same turning around the point here. So have this, the weight, let the weight kind of drop your arm here. So it's maybe about waist level, right? Feel the weight here. And let it connect to that foot so that as you turn, pretty much stays right over that same place. But it turns with your body. Okay, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ideas in this practice that you can kind of carry with you as you feel it some more. So you might feel some principles of why this seems effective, why this can help with holding the center and things like that. But the idea is here that if we hold this weight and hold the center here, our arms, right, our arms are protected. We have that extension practice, right, where we can feel the space around us and feel kind of powerful and strong, but centered and relaxed. Because of course, if we're using our muscular strength all the time, we get tired really quickly. It's harder to hold the space effectively. So this is a feeling of having weight here. If we take the water bottle away, which we're going to do in a second, we want to still feel like there's weight in the hand. And again, the reason in a martial perspective for this is that as we're moving, we're always keeping awareness of our space from the center, right? So my arms aren't moving out here and making myself vulnerable. I'm keeping it right in my center so that if there was to say like an attack or a surprise coming, I'm ready right in my center, any direction I turn. So I'm keeping it with the center of movement. So that's the idea here. The closer that my hand can stay, or my extension of my arms can stay with the center of my movement, the easier it's going to be for me to move from that center to receive, to block, to do any sort of martial interaction. So we're just going to spend another minute or two doing this on both sides without the weight now. Just kind of imagine the weight, because you're not going to always have a weight in your hand when you want to feel this feeling. So again, we can go back to that idea, the one point, the center, the relaxation, the weight underside, right? Feeling heavy arm here. That heaviness will help you also with lifting up. We'll do a practice like that to finish off with. So same practice, have the hand kind of weighted in the position of thereabouts, where your front foot is. And when we turn, we're just going to keep that hand as undisturbed as possible with this turning. It stays kind of in the same place and just turns around, just like the foot. And then do it with the left foot forward too, just briefly before we move on to the next practice. And you can kind of feel almost like you're dropping the weight in, being heavy and relaxed. We carry that same heaviness and relaxation even when we start to move the arm up for different defenses, different kind of movements. And to do your turning around. Okay, great. So we're going to do one more practice real shortly, which we'll revisit next week before we're done for today. So you might have noticed in that practice we were continuing with this turning, this spiraling movement. It's a great way to meet attacks. What we practice in Aikido is we often meet attacks with this notion of entering and blending, that feeling of the spiral, entering directly and blending with the circle. So we don't want to block attacks and retreat from them, but we also don't want to go head first without a embodied strategy, so to speak. So we're going to look a little bit at that just for a few minutes, and I said we'll revisit it again next week. I don't want to go too much over time. So we'll get into our stance again. We're going to start just by looking at this practice of moving up and down here. So you can start with the right foot forward. What we're going to do is we're going to rock forward, bringing the weight mostly on the forward foot. When we do that, the hands are going to move along the center line, just like this, with the palms kind of open, fingertips open. We're going to move it up like here. You could imagine this is kind of a way to meet if someone were to be striking like in a chop, kind of meeting it here. This is the idea here, we're meeting it. But we're doing this in a very linear way. We're going to do it in more of a spiral way in a minute. I just want you to feel that. See if you can embody the same feeling. If you want to, you can grab your weight, go up and down with the weight. You can try to embody the same feeling that we had before with this nice weighted, relaxed arm, even though we're moving it up. Just like our standing posture we did earlier too, the elbows stay heavy and relaxed, always moving from that place of relaxed strength. So you can try that with the left foot forward too. Again, if you want to try it with your weight, you can try it both ways if you like, with the weight and without the weight, feeling that heaviness in the arms. So in Aikido practice, there's actually a name for this exercise. It's called Ikkyo Undo. That actually means first technique practice, for utilitarian language. So we're going to do this practice with a spiral a little bit, which will involve stepping in. So you can stay with the left foot forward here. What we're going to do is step through with the right foot. But I want you in the stance with the left foot to find your spiral shape again. And as you're finding this spiral shape, maybe you can notice how the spiral could just be invited to step the foot forward, right? And you can try that. If we're spiraling, the foot comes around, back, round, back. So we're moving linearly, but the energy is in a spiral pattern. We're feeling the spiral, if even just through the hips. And then we're going to bring the arms into it, the same feeling we were doing before, but the arms move kind of in a spiral pattern too. They stay in front of the center. They come up with the leg and back down. This is the beginning kind of research into entering and blending. You can imagine someone's coming with a strike, you enter, you blend and divert it past your body. And just like with the other practices, feeling that heaviness in the arms. So they're not moving really, really far out with hyperextension, but they have that relaxed strength, that natural extension of the whole body. You're staying relatively in the area of your body center. Okay, we'll try this with the right foot forward too. So you can bring your right foot forward. We're going to move the left foot to step in, but again, start by finding the spiral, if even just through the hips, to feel how this movement is not just linear, right? So that, again, that imagery of the square, triangle, and the circle, right? We have our roots, we have our square, we're weighted, we're heavy. We have our triangle by stepping in, direction, but we're thinking in terms of spiraling. Spiraling of the hips brings the leg through. So the spiral goes in, goes back, yeah. And then you can bring the arms in, just like before, but with that spiral intent. And because we're spiraling, you can start to feel it or see it in my movement. It really can move a theoretical attack off the line of your center into either side in an effective way. Because we're using the whole body, we're not just moving the arms to one side or the other, right? Kind of pushing with the arms, we're spiraling the whole body as one unit. We're entering and blending. Good. Okay. All right, y'all. So let's sit back down and we'll finish out. We will revisit that practice more next week because there's more details and layers of movement I want to go into. But we are at our time for today. And again, like with every practice, I open it up for any things you'd like to share. Thank you all for being here. Nice extending again to you. You can take that practice. Go ahead and take that, put it into your video connections. Yes, thanks y'all. Share anything you'd like to. No pressure, of course.
I just really like the reminders around like stability and mobility. It makes me think of the boxing stand. Some of the work that we did today, and like some of these activities, I'm just gonna try and incorporate them daily. Like the spiraling, when we got up to my neck, chest, I was like, I don't know what direction I'm going. I don't know if I'm moving at all. So I really thank you for that. That was great.
Yeah. When in that last exercise, when I started stepping out, it felt like my spiral was getting larger, right? Like it was still like I had one point that was fixed, but like now that I'm stepping instead of just swaying, it's like I can feel that spiral getting larger, and therefore it's like, I guess, more important for me to stay centered and like bring that back so that the next spiral can stay instead of just going in one direction and falling over kind of thing.
Great, yeah. Great sharing, great observation there. For sure, that's, I think, definitely you're feeling that power of the spiral because it gets big, it can get explosive, you know. One of my teachers talks about, we're not going to get into this in this series, but about the spiraling in kicks, when you practice kicks. And when you work on your spiraling, every kick, every punch, every strike gets way more explosive because you're not moving just laterally, just unidirectionally. But yeah, to hear you say that and you start to notice we're practicing it, we're feeling it, and then you step and it's like, whoa, it's so much bigger. And that's really that power. And you can stay pretty relaxed and someone could come, you know, after years of practice, someone could come with a lot of force behind a strike. And if I just spiral in and meet it, it can just move right past me, you know. And this kind of cultivation is really what it's all about. So thanks, y'all. That was a great practice. I enjoyed doing that with you. So I'll be here next week. All right, take care.
See you next
Bye.
week. Nice to meet you, Amir.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Amira.
To meet
See
you
you next
both.
time.
Thank
Take
you.
care.